video. Well, we made it back, and it's been a little bit. And I'm Molina Mike, where I am on location. And so, first of all, let me know in the chat if you guys can hear us good. It's a little bit different setup than what I'm used to. I'm a few hours away from home, and I'm joined by none other than Michael Panozzo of Beards Digest. Mike, how are you, buddy?
Good, good. Yeah,
Uh,
ready for
I,
a long weekend, vacation weekend, or a little,
where are you going?
Well, I'm not going. Just a holiday weekend. It's nice. Get a couple of days and just kind
Oh,
of
that's right,
chill.
because it's Labor Day, right? Coming
Labor
up.
Day. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's a tradition here in the middle of Texas because it's the same weekend as the Texas Open every single year. So, and it's funny because I know that we go through Monday every year, but for some reason I thought we were ending on Sunday. But I'm going to be here at least for a couple more days. I don't know if I'll be here through Monday, but the tournament will be going on. It's on Pool Action TV. But there's a lot of other things to go and talk about, Mike. The pool world's been kind of buzzing for the last week, man. At least there's been just so many things going on, so many things
Yeah.
upcoming. Um, I kind of don't know where to begin. I know there was some news coming out over the last few days regarding some players and visa issues, and I want to just kind of jump right into that because for me that's kind of the main
Yeah.
topic, and it's not just as it pertains to Dennis, but he is the news of the day, Mike.
Yeah. No, you know, we hear a lot of the foreign players talking about it more. These visa issues that have seemed to have popped up since the beginning of the year when
Right.
Dennis and James Aranis got shagged out of the U.S. um, has kind of brought to light how sensitive this issue is for these players who are doing so much more international travel these days. So many of the European players, so many of the Asian players coming to the U.S. for various reasons, for various tournaments. So, um, you know, that's unfortunately the news today on Dennis is not good. Dennis had another meeting with the U.S. consul at the U.S. Embassy in Manila.
This is
His
the
second
second one that
his
he's had,
second
right, Mike?
meeting, right? And the first meeting, you know, to kind of back up a little bit.
I say, why don't you give a little bit of a reference for maybe some of these people who don't know?
Yeah.
Um,
So Dennis was over here in January and got turned away at the airport by immigration and had his passport stamped and was sent back to the Philippines for overstaying his welcome here. And the punishment for that, which is really weird and really severe, is 5 years
it's pretty
that he
steep,
can't
Mike.
come back to. It's pretty steep for some. This is not someone who, you know, committed a crime, right?
Dennis has
So,
been in the U.S. about the same amount of time over the last few years as I have, Mike, and I think that's part of the
well,
issue.
of course it's part of the issue. So here's the thing with visas like what Dennis had and what pool players in the past traditionally have had. They're
Right.
called B visas, and they're basically tourist visas that allow you to work here. So someone like Dennis would get a visa and it would be approved. And when you had a visa approved to come over here for work and that type of thing, um, it was for 6 months, right? And so Dennis would say, "Well, thanks. I got 6 months. I can stay in the U.S." And then after 6 months, he
Go
would
back home
go.
for a couple
He
weeks.
would go home for a couple weeks and then come. He'd apply for a visa to come back. They give him that, and he said, "Oh, I got another 6 months." Technically, that's not the case. The case is you've got to uh, show that you still have residency in, say, we'll just use Dennis's example. You still have to show that you have residency in the Philippines.
Right.
And if you're over here, you know, anytime you exceed, say, like 65% of the time you're spending in the US, it's going to raise a couple of flags, and they're going to start saying, wait a second, do you reside in the US or do you reside in the Philippines? What is your, so
Well, it's not just the links, right? But it's the frequency along with the links
well, and
may
then
have
the
caused the
frequency
issue.
comes in with his not really knowing that, you know, in like a 12-month period, you really shouldn't be here 11 months. Okay,
One
that's
would
going to,
think, Mike.
yeah, that's so,
Right.
but Dennis is a pool player. he's not a college grad. He's not a lawyer. You know, you start getting into customs and immigration and U.S.
Right.
Department. It's tricky stuff. There's immigration lawyers who work on this stuff 24/7, and
I
they
get it,
don't
Mike.
even
I mean,
understand it. You know, so
the problem is though, is that when we know too well in any part of life, Mike, you know, the whether it's legitimate or not, the I didn't know the speed limit excuse just doesn't go and hold any weight, right? And these are
it
things that you ought to go and know, especially if you're
it
traveling internationally with that kind of
100%
frequency.
you should. And I'm not totally letting Dennis off the hook here.
Right.
By the same token, this isn't holding up a bank. It's not coming in with
Agreed.
drugs and these things.
Agreed.
So
1000%.
5 years is a little bit steep. He should have gotten
It's
a
a
good
lot of bit steep,
reprimand.
Mike, because Dennis is not one of these young bucks who's got a world of
Right.
career ahead of him. Dennis is essentially at the tail end of his career, or at least you would go and say that, and he's probably in his prime right now, even still.
Yeah.
But a 5-year ban, not being able to compete here in the States, to me, Mike, it feels kind of like a career ender. I'm not gonna lie.
It kind of, and I've spoken with an immigration lawyer who's handled several of these cases, including Dennis's, and she's really frustrated, as you can imagine, to work this hard and and see that they're basically, it's not even that he's being turned down as much, that's frustrating as much as the way he's being turned down. He's just being dismissed out of hand. So and they're playing with his livelihood. They're playing with his career. We're talking about
Yeah,
it in terms
100%.
of titles and things like this, but this is
The
the way
ability to earn income as
yeah,
well,
this
Mike. I
is the
mean,
way
this
he
is
earns his income,
right.
and like it or not, the U.S. is the place that most of these guys, if they want to earn income outside of the traditional big international matchroom tournaments, you got to spend 6 months in the U.S. and play every small tournament you can, and gamble and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's
So
not just that. I mean, Dennis is a big part of the pool economy here in the States. You know, maybe some people may not like to go and hear that, but
right,
when
and
you're
it's kind of an argument that you make on his behalf, as his
well, you can
being
argue either side of it though, really.
you
I like
could
in that regard, I mean.
You could, but when you're trying to, like the visa that we'll talk about Federer too now, but the visa that they try to get is these O1 visas, which are individuals with extraordinary ability, right? So that you have to prove that you have this extraordinary ability in your field, your line of work, to get these special visas,
Right.
and
But
part of that.
here's the proactive versus reactive approach, right, Mike?
Yeah, yeah, yep, 100%. Well, Dennis's case has made has woke a lot of these guys up, right?
Right.
So they are being proactive about it. Federer's going through it. Christina's gone through it. Margaret's gone through it. The fillers are going through it. Roberto Gomez went through it. I remember that process. So, yeah, proactive versus reactive. The tough thing about Dennis is, and what I was getting to was that you have to prove that these people. One way to prove that these players have extraordinary ability, and is to make an argument that they're important to the billiard industry in the U.S. Okay, so is Dennis important to the billiard industry in the U.S.? Does he help?
Who's going to
In
say
his
no to
way,
that?
move the needle, right? Right. So you make these arguments on his behalf. And his lawyers have done everything they could to put together these huge folders of documents and send over all these letters of not letters of recommendation, but some of them are letters of recommendation, but also just validating who he is. And validations coming from people and associations that have some
Right.
status and some authority. But they're putting all this together, but before
He's getting brushed off.
yeah, before you can get that 5-year ban waived, he's basically been approved to apply for a new visa, but he's got to get that 5-year ban waived. The first step of going through that is not through immigration; it's through the U.S. Embassy in Manila, and he went in there, and the first time the guy just looked at it and apparently, I mean, I take Dennis's word for it, just looked at it and basically said, sorry, you've been flagged. You're done. It didn't even look at his material, right? And so
It's
they,
disheartening, Mike. I can imagine
yeah,
if you're Dennis, and not just that, but the uncertainty that he's had to go and deal with for over the course of the last, when was this, Mike? At least 6 months ago that we've been dealing with it, if not
yeah,
longer. I think it was before Derby, as a matter of fact. So, first of all, if you guys are just joining us, we're about 10 minutes into dogging it. I'm joined with Michael Panozzo. Hit the like, hit the share button, get it out there. It really helps the show quite a bit. We're talking the news of the day, and right now it's Visa as it pertains to pool players. And news came out today that Dennis had his second meeting with immigration out there in Manila and was denied, essentially, locking in his 5-year ban for all intents and purposes. So it does not look like we'll be seeing Dennis, at least domestically here in the States, back anytime soon, which is it's terrible, Mike. And there's a lot of stake horses. There's a lot of players. Some players who I'm sure are happy. There's a lot of stake horses right now who aren't, because Dennis is a big part of helping a lot of people go and make money out here with his incredible ability. Right.
right. And I just feel for Dennis more, personally, just from the standpoint of, you've talked about it before, matches that he's played in the Philippines now with guys. He just doesn't seem to
He
have
doesn't look the same, Mike. He
doesn't
doesn't.
look the same, doesn't seem to have his heart into it, and it's got to be a frustrating thing. And listen, we talk about a 5-year ban. 5 years, he's going to be 46, right? And even at that point, it's not like this gets expunged from your record. It still shows this 5-year red flag on your thing when you go to apply for another visa. So I don't know. It's really, I'm sure his lawyers are going to keep swinging, and there's other
It's
avenues
hard
of,
though. Like, it's hard to get a seat at the table, but then once you get a seat at the table and you get a meeting, and then to kind of just say thanks, but we're good. And
yeah, it just
that's the part that's
it's
it's hard to stay
brutal.
motivated, Mike. And a guy like Dennis, and maybe this is part of the problem, but Dennis is one of these guys. I just interviewed Tony a couple of days ago that I posted about his match coming up with Shane, and Dennis is a lot alike as it comes to Tony. And what I mean by that is Dennis gets up for the money. Dennis does not get up for titles. Dennis does not get up
Right,
for recognition. That
right.
does not go and make Dennis tick. Don't get me wrong. Like, I'm sure he loves his trophies and all of his accomplishments, but Dennis gets up for making money. So
Yeah,
it's a pretty frustrating day. Dennis, for being out for 5 years at his age, even if he were to be able to come back in, let's say, 5 years, Mike, then you still have 5 years of not playing over here. And there's a big, big difference between playing in the Philippines versus playing over here in the States and being in stroke. And Dennis is widely regarded as the best one pocket player on earth. There's a lot of people who say Alex or Dennis, but Dennis is certainly in that conversation. And on the other side of it, we got Federer in the chat, and there was actually good news as it pertains to the
Federer's
kid, right, Mike? So it's
Federer's
like
posting
yeah.
American flags up here now, which
He'll
is,
be on Mosconi Cup to Mike's delight here in
well.
the
Here's
next
the
few
thing with
years.
Federer. He and I hope he doesn't mind me talking about this, but he got approved for an O1 visa, so he's
Explain
good.
what that means, Mike.
So that's one of those individual of extraordinary ability things, which gives him a lot more freedom to go to and from. The kind of backside to that is that if you want to really get the red carpet treatment or the flexibility, you apply for a green card, which I believe he will be doing at some point.
Federer, that
But
is.
then, yes, Federer. But so he's good. He's good right now. He's good in the U.S. or he's good to be in the U.S. and travel back and forth through like 2025. And so, but if he applies for a green card, then it becomes a little bit tricky again. You have to be careful about leaving the country while your green card application is in there, because if some other country flags you for one reason, you could end up losing your application for your green card. So there'll be things that they have to be careful with. What really helps them this year is that Mosconi Cup's in the U.S.
Well, this is
So
something
if,
that we're
if the
going to go and bring
Mosconi
up
Cup
with.
was in, if the Mosconi Cup was in England this year, it would be it would be touch and go as to whether Federer would want to roll the dice on traveling out of the country to go to Mosconi
That
Cup.
would be an interesting conversation to be had. I don't think we won't be having it, right? Because it's going to be at Bally's in December in Las Vegas. So, and Federer's, perfectly capable and able to go and travel within the U.S. all he wants. He's here right now. He's actually here, literally in town where I'm at right now. And he surprisingly didn't make it to the final of the One Pocket, but he's playing phenomenal pool, as everyone knows. And the main event, Texas Open, is starting, I think, tomorrow, early tomorrow. So. And he'll be one of the favorites in there. But yeah, I mean, the kid went about it the right way, right, Mike? And probably lesson learned from seeing what happened with,
Yes, you
with
have to.
with
You see what
Dennis.
happens, and more players should look into this. And
I hear it's expensive though. I remember talking with I forgot who I was talking to. I think it was the Fillers, Mike, and this was maybe like a few months after what happened with Dennis, and that they were both applying, and they were saying, I mean, it was like five figures to go and be able to apply and everything
yeah,
that
there's
came along with it.
well, because you have to get lawyers involved. You have to get
Right.
lawyers involved who know what they're doing. You're not just going to take some real estate lawyer and trying to get a one visa, right?
Your
So
mom's cousin's best friend from
yeah,
around the corner, right,
exactly.
Mike?
So yeah, it's a process. Anytime you're dealing with governments and state departments and all the red tape and rules and regulations and all the crisscrossing from various departments, whether it's immigration or consulate or the embassy or all that stuff, it gets really tricky. And these people work on this stuff, like I said, 24/7, and they still have to tiptoe their way through a lot of figuring out all the rules. So we hope that this is Federer, Christina, Margaret, Roberto, the Fillers. Some people are going about this the right way, and it's going to take time and it's going to take money. But if you want to roll the dice on getting shagged out of the U.S. for 5 years,
Yeah, but I
go
mean,
ahead and do it.
Dennis has been doing this for quite a bit in the
Well, and
social
it's
media age. You
probably
can
what got him
search,
into as much trouble,
right,
right?
because you can search up Dennis and see him there with 50 in each hand and smiling from
I
cheek
don't
to
think this
cheek,
was
and
an
that's.
IRS issue.
Well,
I
no,
don't
but
think
I'm
this was
sure
an
it doesn't go and
IRS
look good
issue.
when
I
you're
don't
saying
think
I'm
it
coming
was.
over here to go and do one thing, and then they literally see you with money in hand, and you're supposed
Well,
to be
no,
on a tourist
but
visa and
you
not
came
earn
over
money,
here to
right, Mike?
say you came over here saying you come over here. This is your living. You come over here to make your money. You just can't stay here 11 out of 12 months and still call yourself a Filipino citizen
Oh,
or a
so the
resident, right?
so
So
as
it's
far
not.
as far as you understand, the fact that the issue wasn't that he was earning money while he's here. It was rather that it was the length and the frequency of his stay.
Yes,
Is that what you're saying,
much.
Mike?
Yeah, way more than. Yeah, but that's way more the issue than how much money or he was earning here. Was he earning here? If he's coming over here on that type of visa, it's expected that he's coming over here to earn money, right? So that's not that big an issue. So for Dennis, again, it's who knows, and it's such a shame because he got inducted into the Hall of Fame this year. So we're gonna probably have to do a remote acceptance speech from the Philippines, which has got to break his heart because I know it's breaking my heart
Right.
for him. So you're getting a guy at this point in his career
It's tough, Mike.
who's still one of the great players and has reached this level.
I mean, Dennis would be a easy top 10 favorite in any event that he would go and enter in anywhere in the world. And I don't care what the game is. I'm
Yeah,
talking big table, little table, rotation, one pocket, banks, anything American pool related. The guy's going to be a top tier threat to go and do well,
right.
if not win.
No,
I mean,
no
we
doubt
just
about
saw him last year in the U.S. Open. He hadn't played a tournament. I don't even remember how long. Or was it last year, Mike, or the year before? But he ends up, I think, going into the last day, um, and I know he went deep. I can't remember how deep it was. Maybe like final 8, final 16, somewhere in there. And I mean, there was some comments in the chat in regards to what Dennis is doing out there in the Philippines. Look, he's still going to be able to play pool to some extent, but
and he can still go to Europe. There's he's got visas for dozens of other countries that he can go into and play, but he's not going to get the action he gets coming to the U.S. Right?
No, but and on top of that, I mean, he's not, just like you said, it's apples and oranges, Mike.
Yeah.
And then even from a financial standpoint, the money that he can go and earn. Now, Dennis will be like, if they continue to bring in these big names to go and play Dennis, that's one thing. But
Yeah. Now
it's just,
everybody's going over to see him.
well, yeah, rightfully so, right?
Yeah,
Um,
right. It's like follow the money. That's what they always say.
Well, I mean, Dennis is still going to be a draw no matter what. And, I know he's got a lot of fans here in the US and if anyone's ever met him, then you know why he's got a lot of fans.
Yeah.
It's not just for his ability to go and play phenomenal pool. Like Dennis is a good dude, and there's a lot of jerks in the pool world, and he just ain't one of them. So I remember specifically, we were out in Dallas, and I was watching Sky and Dennis play a bar box event, and it got a little testy in there, Mike, and that's me being mild about how it really was in there. And Texas is kind of adopted Sky, right? And so there was a lot of fans rooting for the red, white, and blue on the American side, rather, because the Philippines is the same colors. But anyway, Dennis was fighting back and fighting back and fighting back, and at the end he just came up short. If I'm not, yeah, he came up short. And anyway, it was right after a pretty brutal loss. I mean, literally, like the ball just went in, and Dennis turns around, starts to unscrew the cue, and some kid couldn't have been couldn't have been over 12, 13 years old, Mike, as Dennis literally just lost a lot of money, and it was a lot of money. He's unscrewing the cue, and the kid goes and asks for an autograph. Dennis didn't even bat an eye, Mike. He
Yeah.
smiled. He signed the picture or the ball for the kid. The kid wanted to go and take a selfie, and Dennis did it. And that was after a lot of BS and a lot of a difficult loss. But that's just the kind of guy that he is.
And
It's
that's
it's
all the stuff, I mean, I was involved a little bit in creating documents and qualifying and trying to put into perspective who these players are and why they should get these visas. And character is a huge part of that. And you're right, Dennis, Federer, guys like that. They're
well,
good.
that's why we're
They're
emotionally
good
invested into
people.
into
Hun-
into them, being
100%.
able to stay here.
Yeah. So yeah, and that's what makes it, even more heartbreaking. I mean, these guys are good for the game. And what's good for it's good for the game if they're here. I mean, there's no doubt that they can help move the needle on the American billiard industry, right? So, and I saw a little comment
Yeah.
from Mike Check about Federer better be able to be prepared to pay, taxes. That is going to be the downside to him going through the right process and getting the proper visa. And once he gets a green card,
Listen,
yeah,
you're
he's
not
gonna
looking over
be.
your shoulder though, Mike. You're not going
No,
to be
you're
looking
not
over your
looking over
shoulder
your
if you're
shoulder
doing these the right
for
way.
immigration. You're going to look over your shoulder for the IRS.
Well, I mean, you're
And,
paying for peace of mind,
yeah,
right?
yes, yes, yeah.
And it goes a long way.
He'll be a regular American businessman at that point.
Yeah, I
So,
mean,
but
it's
I'm
kind
sure
of,
he's delighted for the opportunity. And I couldn't be happier than to know that, as sad as I am for Dennis, I'm equally happy for Federer that this process is going well for him and
but
that he
see,
won't have to
if
look
let's say
over
it's
his shoulder.
reversed, Mike, and if a 22-year-old Dennis is facing it, okay, well, you still got a lot of gas left in the tank and a lot of bright futures of pool ahead of you. This to me is a lot tougher to go and swallow just because of his age. And and
It's a gut punch for sure for Dennis. That's why you wonder where his mind frame is going to be going forward. But as you also said, he's a money game guy and not a trophies guy. So as long
yes.
as people are willing to pack up their queue and go to the Philippines, Dennis will stay happy in money games.
Oh, I'm sure he'll go and accommodate you if you're over there, and gladly. But it's different. It's different conditions, and um, Dennis is a phenomenal pool player. There's a lot of matches that I was looking forward to him seeing, i.e., Alex playing in one pocket. So I feel
Yeah.
a little bit robbed there. Reminds me of like Floyd and Pacquiao for all those years that they prolonged it, and then only to go and be like, I don't really want to watch it anymore when you guys are old and have lost a couple of steps, But and who knows, maybe it'll go and happen out there in the Philippines because I know that's a
Well,
premier matchup.
it's interesting that you mentioned Pacquiao's name because the first person I thought of as far as, listen, if the U.S. Embassy Council won't, read his stuff and give him the time of day, I would think a letter from Manny Pacquiao would go a long way. I mean, he's a politician,
He is.
national hero.
He's put on
Knows
he's put on
Dennis,
10 plus
knows,
events out there in
yeah.
the Philippines.
So,
He's got a lot of
and I'm
background with the
sure
game.
not the first person who suggested this to Dennis, but man, if I'd find some way to get into his ear, because you just need, it seems like you need to somehow get a direct connection to the U.S. Council and say, listen, just, take a look at this file. Don't just kiss it off. Take a look at this file. And, all the information's here, and give him a puncher's chance, right? So yeah, just really frustrating stuff. Got to tell you.
Well, if there's one thing I know about Dennis from watching him over the years, is that he's a fighter, and Dennis has got that Filipino heart in him, and that Filipino blood, and they don't give up. I'm hoping that he can keep his mind right and keep that same strength, and we'll be rooting for him, and be getting up, late nights and early mornings to watch him, from across the way, because I'm still a fan and I still enjoy watching him play some great pool. And hopefully he does go and travel. I know we didn't see him at the European, for whatever reason. That we didn't see him at the Asian event either, Mike.
Yeah, that one I was a little
I don't
surprised that he wasn't at the Asian event.
agree.
I don't know what the issue is, if there's any kind of visa issues with Singapore, or whatever. But there's certainly a lot of other Filipino players there. So Europe, I'm not
Was
really as surprised, because then he is just going on a tournament trip and turning around and coming home. And
That's
as
never
you
been
said
Dennis's
before,
thing.
it's not his thing. He's not going to make that
No,
trip that far and roll the dice on a double elimination tournament, or with a lot of the Matchroom things, single elimination really early on, and
right.
you're there 2 days and you got to go back home. And he just, that's not his gig. So
But you never know, Mike. I mean, if you go and let's say you snap off a major, and you can, you're not going to be able to force anyone's hand, because I think
right.
he doesn't have that kind of strength right now, at least right now. But it certainly argues your case, though. Wouldn't it, Mike? Like,
Well,
look at what.
there's so much in the documentation that argues his case. But if nobody looks at the documentation, I don't care if he
It's
wins every
fair.
tournament in a year. There was stuff in the documentation. He's big enough in the U.S. to get into the Billiard Congress of America Hall of Fame, and he's supposed to get his plaque in November. Nobody, if nobody reads it, who cares? Who knows? So yeah.
Well, yeah, it's a discouraging day, that's for sure, when it comes to pool. And the news this morning that Dennis's second attempt to get his O1, or at least get someone to go and look at his.
The
I don't
main thing
know
is to
what
get
supposed to
his
be.
5-year ban waived. That's the
Right,
main thing, is so that
and
then
it
he can
was
apply for another visa.
denied.
And I don't even know if they didn't even get far enough to deny him. I think they just said, "I'm sorry, your passport's been flagged, and go home." And
Well, it's
apparently,
brutal,
and
Mike.
from what Dennis had told friends and or his lawyer or whatever, in the Philippines, is that they knew who he was. That he heard the name, when they were speaking, the name RoboCop came up a couple times. So it just, yeah, I don't get it. I don't get it. It's really, but that's the way, government official, or anybody you give the power of God to,
Right.
who has the power to just, brush you off, tell you to go home, whatever, and you can't do anything about it. That's tough shit.
Well, hopefully it's not the last punch you can go and take, but and hopefully next time we come on and talk about Dennis, it's with good news, and we
Yeah,
hope to
yeah,
go and see him at least go and compete, man. But it's easy for to go and say that from here, and if
yeah.
you're that kind of discouraged, and I can't say I blame him, but um,
Well, I think that one of the lessons out of this, and one of the posters just said, what does this mean for other players traveling here? Um, you know, they need
be
players
proactive.
be proactive, know what you're getting into, know what the restrictions are, know what the requirements are, know how to speak to people, in immigration offices and things, or, at the airport, all that kind of stuff. And it just, the more, and they will, and they are learning more and more about this as time goes by. So, it just, but the more they know, the better off they're going to be. I'm actually working with an immigration lawyer on an article for the magazine that basically is, a dummy's guide to visas
For
to
pool
come play
players.
in the U.S. And just try to help educate. And
It's unfortunate because Dennis is going to be that kind of, you don't want to end up like him kind of example.
right,
And a
yeah,
lot of these,
someone ends up being the example for this stuff.
right. And they
And
better they better go and heed that warning, right, Mike? They better go
yeah,
and
don't
take
yeah.
notice.
This is not to be played with. Now, I have no idea if James Aranis is going through this, trying to go through the same process. I've not really heard much from
I don't,
his end on trying to get back here. I've not been solicited by anybody as far as, can you help us find some people or sources that would
well, I mean,
give some legitimacy and credibility to him coming over here.
I'm gonna just say one thing, and and I love James, but if I'm watching Dennis and knowing everything that Dennis has accomplished and seeing everything that he's gone through, and then to still get denied, would I want to go through all that knowing that I don't have the same resume or a name like a
Yeah,
Dennis
I don't
does?
know. I don't know if one red flag's redder than the other. So I don't know
Your
if
guess is as good as
James'
mine, buddy.
case is looked at as, he hasn't gone to the U.S. 97 times in the last 5 years. Maybe it's a little bit easier to digest. But yeah, I don't know. But again, I haven't even heard of anybody speaking on his behalf saying that he's taking a swing at this. So maybe he's not all that interested in coming back. I don't know. He went to Singapore, obviously, but
And did well.
yeah.
Dennis is
So
I remember, when these rankings first came out, and I'm talking about the Matchroom rankings as it pertains to 9-ball pool. I argued on James's behalf that he ought to be in that top 10 because last time we've seen him, he was in the final at Derby City, playing Sky, and what ended up being a great final.
right,
And he's had a lot of consistency, and he showed that with the Asian Open that just happened out there in Singapore. He played smooth. He came up a little short at the end, but he was there to go and be able to be crowned a champion. And you would think that if there ends up being something like a Reyes Cup at some point, that these Asian events are going to be, if you're going to earn points to be able to get those spots. So these are going to become super important. Now, Matchroom hasn't announced anything, and I don't know anything. I mean, I've heard a little bit of whisper here and there that we brought up on the show. But if the way that they seem to be transitioning to doing more events out there in Asia, pushing these players, announcing codes in the top 10 and things like
yeah,
that, I'd be guessing that, that news would be coming out sooner than later. And I know me for one, I'd be excited for it. And Dennis would certainly be in that conversation of top 5 Asian players to be able to make that team, Mike. And he's cold blooded.
yeah, yeah. That's boy. You talk about having a tough time. Pick Team Europe, man. Pick Team
Yeah.
Asia. Jesus. I mean, that's no easy pick either. Holy crap.
No, not at all. But let's transition, Mike, and I don't really know where we go from here. This was where we started, but there's been a lot of other things going on out in the pool world.
Yeah,
I just got a chance to interview Tony recently, and there was
saw
news
that.
coming out of him going and playing Shane. And I'm curious to a guy who's not really a one pocket connoisseur like Pinozo is. What was your thoughts on it, Mike?
um, you know, I, I just found it interesting. Tony's got to love it. I mean, I heard him kind of sweet talking his way through the interview yesterday about, guys need to challenge themselves and all that stuff. And uh, I'm just kind of curious as to why Shane went ahead and said yes. I mean, Shane is Shane, and Shane loves money matches like anybody else.
Right?
Shane does not have a great track record against Tony playing one
It
pocket.
is not.
Um, and, eh, Tony even mentioned something about, well, it might be around Mosconi Cup. I'm thinking, well, it sure as hell isn't going to be right before Mosconi Cup, because the last thing Shane needs to do before Mosconi Cup is get into a 3-day one pocket match.
No, now wait a minute, Mike. Hold on a second. Hold on a second, Pinozo, because I'm going to argue the other way. I'm going to
No.
argue that I think it's great, and here's the reason why. If and I expect it to be this way, if the Mosconi Cup is changed with that break box, and there's going to be that kind of inconsistency with the break, then I'm going to want my guy, my ace, my number one guy to be ready to move.
Shane
And
knows how to move. Shane doesn't have to
but
play
it's
one
different.
pocket for
I mean,
3 days.
but if he's gonna come off of a fresh one pocket set with Tony Chohan coming into the Mosconi Cup, I know my man's gonna give him everything he's got. I know he's gonna give the
Yeah,
Europeans that much more trouble
all
because
I
he's gonna
remember
have a lot of creativity after playing Tony. Tony's going to go and
I
twist them all the
agree.
way up.
I agree with that part of it. I just, I remember talking to Alex about this a few years ago at Derby City, and he said, how different he shoots playing one pocket and how it kind of messes with his 9-ball
Rotation stroke.
stroke
Right.
for longer shots, power and balls, things like that. And he said it's tough to one really affects your game the other way.
It's true.
So from that standpoint, I think
think
Shane knows enough about moves
didn't
already.
have much of his pitch and his giddy up playing against Chip because he was just firing 8 and outs from anywhere and everywhere. I don't think Tony will give him that luxury, but
I don't think he needs it before Mosconi Cup.
Well, I think
he knows the moves. I think
yeah, but it's you're sharpening up an aspect of the game that's gonna be on.
You know what I want him to sharpen up? I want him to sharpen up the aspect of making an 8.5 foot length shot with the score 4-4 and the clock counting down. That's when I want to know that his arms.
He's got that in his repertoire as well, Pinozo.
The end of the European Open would suggest otherwise.
Man, that is brutal, Mike. God damn. Hey, but he did go and hit the bank to at least get in that spot. But you're right, though. That 4-ball was pretty tough. Damn, Pinozo, I don't know you were coming with the fire today.
It's Friday before a holiday weekend, man.
I know, right? It's 5 o'clock already. What do you got on the desk over there, Mike? What do you got on the desk? No, I'm really looking forward to it. I had heard after the Chip match that Shane wanted no part of Tony, and even when Tony was barking at a big number, that didn't go and matter to Shane. I know when I talked to him out there in South Texas the first day before he played Chip, I asked him point blank, what do you want to go and play any of these top guys? And he didn't even hesitate. He said, no, I do not want to play.
So what do you think? Why do you think he says yes to this?
Well, there's a lot of money saying that Shane can go and beat Tony. And if you're getting staked, why wouldn't you go and take a shot when you're not going to have a whole lot of your own at risk to go and lose, right? And on top of that, I'm just going to put this out there, right? These guys who are playing these big matches, yes, they're gambling, and they're usually gambling for a pretty large amount of money, but they get money to go and show up as well, right? Yeah. So, and that helps. So if you're going to have guaranteed money coming in, plus you're going to have a chance at making some really serious money. If you go and win, why wouldn't you go and do it, Mike? You'd be foolish not to, and this would be especially with Dennis being gone, this is as premier a one pocket match as you're ever going to go and see, because I know Ray and Pool Action TV is promoting Tony versus Alex, but this is like part 4. We've seen that. We've seen that already. We have not seen Shane play. And no disrespect to Chip, but Chip ain't Tony, and Chip isn't Dennis, and Chip isn't Alex. We haven't seen Shane play one of these top 3 guys, and I think people are excited to go and see where does he really go and stack up. Now, as much as I think the money is important to Shane, I also think Shane's a competitor, Mike, and I think that a little part of him wants to go and shut Tony up, because if you've ever been anywhere, and I mean anywhere, where those two guys are in the same room,
a little chirping going on.
Let me tell you something, okay? First of all, go get yourself a drink and go order the popcorn and go sit by and just shut up and just listen, because what you're going to hear is Tony just needle him and needle him and needle him, and Shane will play. I didn't hear him roll for a little bit, and then maybe to some extent it's true, but after a while, you'll see Shane kind of get fed up with it and tell Tony in so many words to shut the you-know-what up, because he doesn't want to go and hear it, right? So now we're going to get these boys together, and they're going to go and play some great one pocket, and I think it's going to be a contrast of styles, because Tony is the elite.
Well, I hope they have him mic'd up then.
Oh, I hope so too. Well, Shane doesn't do a whole lot of chirping during the matches. He kind of lets his cue do the talking, but I'm really excited for him, for it, Mike. I know a lot of people are. I think even just the amount of views that video with Tony had gotten, even I was kind of surprised with it, and the amount of comments. And I get it. Like, and people made that argument. Well, Tony, says to go and challenge yourself, but he doesn't want to go and play Shane rotation. Tony knows he's got no shot at playing rotation. Like, Tony's not dumb. And for Tony, it's not a pissing contest to see who the best pool player is. Tony's a one pocket specialist. Now, in a race to 9, does he have a puncher's chance at knocking one of these top guys out? 1,000% he does. I've seen him go and beat the DeLunas of the world. I've seen him beat all these elite rotation players. James Aranas, who we just talked about. I remember at the International a few years back, Tony gave James all he can handle when James was playing as well as anybody on earth playing rotation, Mike. So he's got that kind of ability. But everyone knows he's got no chance at playing Shane in any kind of rotation game. And it's not about that. Shane's got a chance to beat Tony legitimately. And there's a lot of money that says so, Mike. So
it'll be fun. Then. I just hope it's not a week before Moscone. That's all I'm saying.
Well, if it is, are you watching? Because I know I will be.
Yeah, I guarantee it's not before Moscone.
Well,
he said possibly December around Moscone. I would think, between Moscone.
A lot of it's just coordinating with Shane's schedule.
Right.
And then busy just trying to make. Yeah. He's got a busy calendar, and this is one thing that I want to just let everyone know. Like Tony didn't go and bark at Shane afterwards after beating Chip to ask for this matchup. There's a lot of people with a lot of money who wanted to go and see it, and that's what kind of forced its hand. But Tony's always said, yeah, I'll gladly go and play Shane. And Tony's one of these guys where he's not that difficult to go and make a game with. And what I mean by that is like he'll give a lot. He wanted 4 1/8. Shane wanted 4 1/2. Or no, he wanted 4 1/4. So he said done. And then the compromise is, well, I don't want to play on fresh cloth. I want to play on worn in cloth. So there's giving and taking, but Tony just likes to play, and Tony's side can usually come up with a lot of money. They usually like their guy. And one thing that I know is when I've seen, and especially that one matchup at Buffalo's, and this won't be at Buffalo's, but when Tony's side comes up with a lot of money to go and bet, Tony can go and be kind of a chameleon that I've never seen before, and he can really go and change his game. So if that number is where I think it'll end up being at, then you're going to see Tony really grind hard for the cash, and it'll really make for a great,
I hope so.
A great matchup. So, it'll be good. What other stuff was going on in the pool world, Mike, over the last couple of weeks or last 2 weeks since we've been on? What am I missing? We kind of just came on here on the fly.
Well, I don't think it's going to get any better than we've already done. It's been a fun show. Not really much. And we've talked since the European, so.
Well, we got the world game, the team games coming up, and I wish I had a graphic for it, but there's a lot of stacked players on each country's team, and I, for one, and this is going to be a Predator event, which means that they'll have some great streaming going along from coming from Austria, so I'm really looking forward to that. And those teams, Mike, seem to be super stacked. I was one of these guys, 10 years ago, where I'm staying up at 4 a.m. to watch the team events, and they were one of my favorite because when you include a Scotch type format, it really changes the game, Mike. I remember years ago, and we talk about Shane and Dennis, right? I remember Shane and Dennis, and this is like when they're in their prime of being super intimidating, and they went to the Philippines to play a Scotch tournament, 10-ball tournament, and this is like Shane's big 10-ball break, right? They go and get robbed by like a 12-year-old Centano, and I forgot who the other kid was, but like the dynamic of playing Scotch with a partner, and Dennis has always been known, like he doesn't do well when it comes to playing partners. Right. So it brings a different dynamic, Mike, that I love seeing in pool.
Yeah, well, it'll be fun. Some teams are stacked, and some teams kind of, look like they sent over whoever could go.
What teams are you talking about, Mike?
I'm not talking about everything.
No, you're talking about somebody.
Well, the U.S. team isn't the strongest team we've ever had.
There it is. This is what I was trying to get.
I wouldn't have said anything except I saw 2 other teams that to me were the same, and I can't remember who they were now. That were really not the best 3 options. But either way, it'll be a fun event. It's cool. I'm glad Predator brought that back, and it should be fun to watch for sure, because it will be live streaming for free. And
I know this wasn't like Team USA's first choices when it comes to players being sent out, and I don't think anyone would go and argue that it's the 3 best Americans that they could go and send to Austria to go and compete. But what I can tell you is, Tyler's been playing some pretty decent pool lately. and then what I mean lately is in the last few months, going back to the World Games, Mike. And I mean, you
Yeah,
can say,
no,
and we talked about him not being able to get to the finish line, but he's at least been in the dance to say like
yeah,
I got
no.
a chance.
Tyler's strong, certainly strong enough to play on his team, but he's going to have to carry the team. He's playing with April Larson and Joey Tate, so this isn't exactly, you
I'm
know.
I'm I'm Team Joey Tate, Mike,
I
and
I love Joey
and
Tate. I think
he's
this
a
is a
good
great
kid,
opportunity for him. I think it'll give him great experience.
definitely.
It's great stuff. But if you're looking at two Co's and whoever,
Well,
two
yeah.
Co's and two Co's and anybody with a dress, and Darren and
Dude, Mike,
Kelly
you're
and
just you're
Jason or
just something else
whatever.
today, Mike. You are really just something
Then you
else
got
this morning.
Kelly and Jason and Darren and whatever. I mean, I'm sorry, Joey Tate's in over his head a little bit as far as what your expectations are.
I mean, you cannot go and argue the other way at all.
Right.
I saw Joey play a lot of pool out there in Sacramento at Hard Times at Oscar's Place. And by the way, Oscar and Gold State Billiards is one of our sponsors, as I point up there and that over there by the chat. And Joey's hitting the ball really well. Now there's a difference playing against juniors from across the country versus playing with the Coes and the Shaws and all these guys. I love that he's getting in there.
Yep.
And the Scotch format, like I said, really adds a different dynamic to it where Cinderellas can kind of go and happen. You can have a 16, upset in a 1 seed.
Yeah.
I think for sure they'll be up against it, right? Even just on
Yeah. No,
paper
I
alone.
think, like I said, I think it's a great opportunity for Joey. That's what I
And by
like
the way, I
most
reached
out
out to
of this whole
Tyler this
thing.
morning to see if they wanted to come on, but they're getting ready and they're flying out, I think Sunday.
Okay.
So, and they
Yeah.
were
Well,
just
good luck to them.
they were all focused.
Yeah, they should be. Sometimes, you're talking about Cinderellas, sometimes teams like that who know that there's not high expectations on them.
Look at the World Pool
I'll
Masters,
bet
Mike.
that they,
Aloho Sum got in the final when
yeah,
he was probably the eighth, ninth favorite on that side of the bracket,
I wouldn't be surprised if Tyler and April and Joey, were really dialed in and focused because they know they're going to have to be, the best of their best to be able to pull off a couple of big wins, right? And a lot of these other teams are probably just going and say, well, we're three great players. We'll just show up there, put our cue together, and we're going to have a pretty good shot. So maybe you can catch a couple people off guard by you coming in more prepared than other people. I'm sure that they worked hard at it and they're dialed in and yeah, let's see what happens.
Well, I wish I had the graphics up because there's a bunch of stacked teams. Team Spain, for one, is one that stood out to me with the two the World Cup of Pool champions and a female player by the name of Matas who plays great pool as well. Of course, the Austrian team is going to be stacked. You got Mario back with Albin, and then of course Jasmine. I mean, Team Taiwan, like you mentioned, there was no Team China on there, unfortunately, but I mean, it really is going to be a phenomenal event with high caliber and quality players from
It'll be
top to
great.
bottom. But I'll tell you what, and I'm not saying it because I'm a homer because I'm not Michael Panozzo. I really would like to go and see the Americans maybe go and upset someone. It will be difficult, but they can all go and play 9-ball, and 9-ball is a goofy game, Mike. You go and play, or are they playing 10-ball? I'm guessing they're playing 10-ball now that I think about it.
You're right. You're right. Yeah, I'm assuming 10-ball. Yeah.
Well, that might be a little bit of a joke. But Tyler's on second thought, no. Tyler's got a big break, but I don't know what you're going to get out of Joey and April when it comes to their break. But it'll be great, and I think that starts in about 4 days. You can catch all the action.
Someone chime in. Is it 10-ball or is it 9-ball?
I'm guessing Mark White was in here.
I would guess that it's 10-ball since that's they're doing the.
Shane Tyree says, "Do you know when the brackets will be released?" Shane, you'd probably be the second guy going message to ask that question myself. So if you don't know, then I might be in a bad game.
Yeah, what am I missing here? Isn't that kind of a problem that he's asking us?
Yeah, no kidding, right? No, but I think it's gonna be. Shane says it's gonna be 10-ball for sure. So there you go, and they're following that up with the Women's World 10-ball. So it makes perfect sense. I'm sure they'll be playing on the Predator Apex tables, the 9-footers. So it'll really make for a different dynamic. I am really looking forward to it. I love events like this, Mike. I think this is the type of event that could get people back excited about the Predator Pro Billiard Series. I know we've seen a women's event recently. And I know they got a men's event coming up and a women's event coming up in Michigan. So I am beyond pumped to go and see it, and we'll probably do another show, just in regards to this. Um, Patrick Neal says show prep is overrated. It really is, man. Let me tell you, because I did not. I literally I
Seat of the
messaged
pants,
Mike this
man.
morning and I said, "You want to do something?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Okay, well, let's do something." So
Yeah.
usually we have graphics and a whole bunch of other stuff lined up, but I just kind of winged it. And literally, I'm gonna tell you, the guy on the truth, Mike. So I didn't leave the pool room last night until probably like 2 a.m. Right. My buddy Nick was playing Blaine Barkis a decent set of 10 ball. Since we're on that topic. And anyway, we leave from there and get back to the hotel room, and then I have to get up at 6 a.m. So by the time I go to bed, it's like 3:30, and then I got to get up at 6 to take Dom and his buddy Jameson
Oh, to the airport?
to the airport. Yeah, they were like, "No, we'll take an Uber," and I said, "No, I'm not gonna let you guys take an Uber. I got my car." So, but I'm on fumes, and as soon as I'm done from here, I'm heading back to the Texas Open because they got a ring game that starts in about a half an hour. But there's a ton of great stuff going on in pool, and we're gonna go and circle back when it comes to this. Is that your house, Mike, or mine? What is going on there?
There's
Uh,
motorcycle gang going by the window
okay.
here.
Well, they're coming to get you, Pinoza. You look
Yeah.
like the ringleader there.
No, I
Uh,
just meet them at the bar. I buy all the drinks.
no, now that I believe,
Yeah.
that I do believe. No, but there's a lot of great events coming up right now, and even right now as we're uh, talking about Filipinos, Roberto Gomez snaps off another Texas Open one pocket. It is
Yeah.
his second, and I think the last like 3 or 4 years. So Roberto seems to be playing great. It was a final that personally I didn't go and expect, because I don't think anyone expected Calderon to go and beat Pagulayan and Federer in the same event. But nevertheless, and actually it was a lot of upsets, Mike, and that's something that you really don't see a whole lot in one pocket, because the cream tends to rise to the top, especially as the races go and get longer. And these were race to 5 and race to 4, so these were very true. But when you play on a standard diamond, it anything funky can go and happen. But all the congrats in the world to Jerry as well for making it to a final. He's kind of got, I'm not gonna lie, Mike, it's a tough style of one pocket for my taste to go and appreciate, just because there's a lot of thought, being placed on there. And one pocket's, known to have a lot of thought and creativity, but when it's drawn out, I mean, I can kind of check out, I'm not gonna
Yeah,
lie.
of
But
course.
Roberto, to his credit, he played phenomenal. And really, I mean, if you talk about these two guys making it to a final, you had Sky, you had Billy, you had Tony, you had Alex, you had Federer. I mean, you had so many guys that, and I mean this with no disrespect to either one of them, but that you would have gone and guessed
Yeah, right.
that they would
Yeah,
have been
sure.
there at the end of the event. So, congratulations to both players. The Texas Open 9 ball starts. Well, the Calcutta's tonight, and then I don't know if they're gonna have one round tonight. If not, then they'll start early tomorrow. But you can check that out at Pool Action TV. I'll be doing a bunch of stuff from there as well, whenever I can, and if Facebook does not shut down my music, or because of the music, which has been fucking brutal, man. But Hanchu's out there. I'll be posting some more pictures of the Texas Open queue. Got a comment in there: who beat Scott Frost? Alex beat Scott Frost, and what nobody saw ended up being an epic match between Alex and Scott. Scott had Alex on the ropes and was dead and done, and Alex found a way to get back in it and force the case game where he ended up winning. But Scott had a chance that game as well. So, and you're always going to get that when you go to the Open. The quality of the field is pretty strong. Last night they had a mini Mike. Sky and Oi were in the finals of that single elimination, which, I mean, you got Federer there. You got a couple other guys who can go and take a swing, but those are two guys who you would not be surprised to see them in a
Yeah.
final of a 9-ball event, and always playing great, Mike,
Yeah.
and great at the Open.
He has been playing really well. You got Turning Stone going on at the same time. If you're
Oh, that's right,
for
Mike. Yeah,
Shane
upstate
and
down.
Jason and a couple of those guys are up at Turning Stone. So,
well, I'd be surprised if it didn't end up with those two in the finals. And I think they're both chasing number 7. At least
Yeah.
on paper, they're the two favorites to go and get there. And they both had a ton of success over the years. It's unfortunate that they're scheduled on top of one another. But yeah, that's going to be great. And you can check out that stream free on Facebook as well. Upstate Down, them, they always do a great job.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, if you're going to tell me I get Shane and Shaw versus the field, how high can we bet, Mike?
At that field for sure, because really, once you get out of the top 10 players at that field, it's it's a full field, but it's not anything that's going to scare Jason or Shane.
No,
Uh,
no. But
so
that format's a little funky. I mean, you still got your
yeah,
opponent
I mean, yeah,
racking
it
for you,
does. Right.
So it's a little unique, and that's putting it mildly. What am I missing here? Yeah, so it's going to be a lot of fun over the next few days. We'll try to go live. I know Mike's going to be busy this weekend, but I'm going to try to go live and see if we can get some more characters in here, or if Mike gets some free time, we'll bring him back. And there was a lot of stuff to go and talk about, a lot of stuff I'm sure we missed, but we'll do our best to come back and wrap it up and talk about it. If not next week. Oh, and we got Alex Laley. We were supposed to have him on Thursday. We actually rescheduled, and I think it's going to be at the beginning of next week. And
yeah, great.
there's a lot of guys that we're going to go and bring up. And the main guy that I think everybody wants to hear his thoughts on is going to be Fedor. So make sure you guys tune into that, because we're going to go and grill him. Right, Mike?
And Alex is a straight shooter. I mean, Alex isn't going to duck any questions about what he thinks about certain players, benefits, drawbacks, things like that. So
I'm going to tell you the God honest truth, right? So Mike messages me, and I think we were both in agreement, let's reach out to Alex too after we brought on Jeremy, right? And in my head, I'm thinking, man, I don't know if I want to go and ask him, like, hey, this is what we're going to do, similar to what we did with Jeremy, because it can kind of be a little uncomfortable, and being them in that position, right? And then being asked those kinds of questions. He didn't even hesitate. He said, I would love to.
Yeah, Alex is a smart. He's smart. He's thoughtful. He's straightforward. I think, when he's got these guys on the team, he tells it to them straight too. I mean, he doesn't mince words. He's not a hard ass, but yeah, no, he'll give it to you straight. He'll give you as much as he can give you without giving you too much.
Yeah, without a doubt. So just stay tuned. I'll be posting some more stuff about that as soon as we might even have a date, and I just don't remember what it is right now off the top of my head. But we'll post
when it is, when you find out what it is, let me know. All right.
I will definitely make sure and let you know. Make sure you have the notifications on, hit the like and subscribe button, share the stream. It helps out quite a bit. We appreciate everybody for tuning in. Mike, I appreciate you for coming on.
It was fun.
Late notice, man. And I appreciate all your insight that you always bring. So anyway, you guys have a great afternoon, and maybe we'll do some later. See you guys.